I'm Peter from the Daily Rios.
I'm Eric from Longbox Review, and this is episode 26 of Peter and Eric's Legion Project podcast. Hello and welcome to the Legion Project podcast. I am your host, Eric.
And I'm your host, Peter.
And we are here to discuss issue 26 of the third volume of the Legion of Superheroes. But first, Peter, how are you doing?
Doing okay. We're getting into the end of the year. We're getting into some of my favorite months, some favorite holidays, even though it's all going to be people staring at each other on Zoom or
on Zoom, yeah. Oh, you're one of those. You're like my wife. She loves this time of year. Mm-hmm. October through the end of December is like her favorite time of the year, and all I do is think about how cold I am that whole time.
My body usually runs warm. I don't know if it's the Latino in me or what. But, I could imagine, I've met you in person. You're kind of thin, so you don't have insulation like I do. But no, I do. I do. I don't like the cold. I'm with you on that. I'm not a fan of the extreme cold. I just like the food and the socializing, although that's not going to happen. Between Halloween, which I had fun with, and Thanksgiving, my birthday, Christmas, New Year's, got to include New Year's on that, plus my winter break from school, which is like anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm all about this time of year.
That, if I had time away from work like that, I would probably learn to love this time of year too.
Right. Well, I mean, normally I do a show at this time, like around October, November. I would start directing a production, but obviously, with the industry totally at a standstill, there is none of that going on. So that's also another plus. I get to engage in my craft, which is always fun. So not this year. Outside of I could put on random puppet shows in my basement if I wanted to, but.
Well, Peter, if you did that and put it out there for people to watch, I certainly would be one of those people, one of those viewers.
I don't need any more distractions. I've been a very lazy podcaster during all of this, so I don't need more distractions.
Oh, I hear you. Other than a few things I've recorded myself, and then our chats, I haven't been doing nearly as much as I feel like I should, certainly. So I don't know what the deal is, but yeah, it's kind of like this malaise that I feel just kind of enveloping me through this whole thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's very good that I have this this distraction, at least to kind of break myself out of it. Of course I talk to my family, but this is different. This is exercising a part of my brain that I don't normally get to do. So this is I'm really liking these conversations, Peter. So thank you for allowing us to do this at this time.
Oh, of course. Look, I mean, we all could use this year as a do-over.
Oh God.
And your birthday's in December, right? So I don't know about you, but maybe I might not even celebrate my birthday. Maybe I'll wait. I'll just say I'm not going to count this year.
That's right. Hey, you could just say you're 26 again.
Yeah. Hey, I'll take it. There's a random Superboy story from the 80s where it's like they celebrate his birthday, but I think it's issue number 1 of the New Adventures of Superboy, where they stick an extra candle on his birthday for some reason, and maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just not celebrate this year, but next year I'll pretend I'm still, whatever age I'm supposed to turn, but I'll just put an extra candle for the truth,
There you go.
It all comes back to comics. So I have a few little notes that I wrote down to start us off here prior to our discussion. I want to dedicate this episode to, if you don't mind, to Chris, Charlton Hero. I don't know, this is now becoming a thing, dedicating an episode. Just because of all the feedback that Chris has given, the constant Twitter support, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And most likely by the time you hear this, I hope, I was a guest on a podcast with Chris. I don't know exactly the format of the episode. It might just be him and I, or it might be part of a larger podcast with a bunch of other interviews. So whenever it gets released, I'll make sure people know about it, and hopefully he doesn't mind giving an early plug, because I don't know when it's going to get released.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it was good. It was a nice free range, just an overview of just a whole bunch of things, comic reading and podcasting, etc. So we got to touch on some new areas.
Yeah, see, and those are those kind of episodes I really love. It's nice that we get together and we talk about something very specific. But when I'm listening just to other comic book podcasts, I just kind of like it when the hosts just kind of run a range of topics and just give their thoughts on things. So yeah, that's cool.
There were a couple of Legion solicitations in the October previews, the one from last month. Did you see that Legion trade before Darkness?
Oh, yes. Guess who pre-ordered that? I can't help myself.
Because those are the issues like right in your sweet spot, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have the individual issues, but for some reason, it's the Legion and the Titans. I have this perverse desire to own multiple copies of these issues. So yeah.
Well, I mean, the Legion's not collected a lot.
Right. Exactly.
Outside of very expensive archives, omnibuy, or black and white essentials, which they don't do anymore. But the Baxter run is digital. You can read it digitally or on the DC app, but not in trade format.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you could easily do a whole Paul Levitz trade collection, which I guess that Before Darkness sort of kind of touches on that. So,
well, and it's a little strange, isn't it? Because wasn't that solicitation for a softcover collection?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like they did for the Great Darkness Saga, and I forget what the other one is called. But yet they put together the Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes issues in a couple hardcover collections that I have. So I really don't understand their strategy for collecting the Legion stuff.
A couple places has it listed as hardcover. I don't know. I don't remember. But it's collecting issues 260 through 271, and then Secrets of the Legion of Superheroes 1 through 3.
Yeah, so those are issues that I had to get in back issue form, because that was right before I got into the Legion.
And then coming up in DC's Future State in January, February, there's a Legion title.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Did they say that the current Legion title is canceled or just postponed? I don't remember.
I don't recall hearing or reading anything regarding it being canceled.
Okay.
I hope not, because I'm actually Maybe this should be saved for a future Legion project, Tales of the Legion project. But I'm actually really enjoying these later issues of the Bendis Sook run.
I'm still not out of like issue 3 or 4. So.
Oh, okay. Ooh, well, interesting. We will have to talk about this at some point.
Now, some of that's because I moved, and I'm just not. I wasn't in a reading mood, I guess, for a long time. So yeah.
Oh yeah, boy. Yeah, call back to the earlier part of our conversation, but same for me. It's like I have this stack of issues that I've gotten from my orders at DCBS, and I love comics. I mean, we are here talking about Legion comics, but I just don't feel the pull to be reading a lot right now. It's weird.
Chalk it up to 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you, Peter, are you interested in that Future State 2-issue Legion thing?
Oh, yeah. I'm always a sucker for anything that's like familiar or has kind of the same publishing theme that the old Age of Apocalypse had in the early mid-90s or whenever it was, when X-Men stopped all of their titles and just had this random amazing alternate, timeline kind of thing. And it's really what I thought Flashpoint should have been too. Like they should have wrapped up all their titles first, then did Flashpoint, then did the New 52, but they didn't do it that way. Convergence was sort of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even 1 year later to a degree, where I guess that's what I think might come out of Future State. This idea that all the titles will come back again and will be in a new status quo, whatever that is. So I'm really looking forward to Future State. I like those events. They're kind of like it's an expansion of whenever DC used to do the 5th week event.
Yeah.
Like Silver Age or Joker's Last Laugh or Girl Frenzy or just some other things. So yeah, I'll get it. I might even get all of them. Who knows? Or we'll see.
I'm probably going to wait for a collection or when they show up in the DC app. But I definitely will read all of them at some point. Right. But I was very interested in one detail of the Future State Legion book. And that is that it's set 1,000 years beyond, I presume, where the Legion is now. Oh. Which I think that's what it said. And that was something that I think you brought up when we first started talking about what the possibilities were for Bendis bringing back the Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. And I think also that didn't he referred to a 31st century or 32nd, I don't remember whatever number it is, but it seemed like early on he was making references to a more distant time than what we would normally associate with the Legion, which is 1,000 years from now. And I think that's what that solicitation said. It's even further ahead. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, one of these images says Legion 5000 from his Instagram.
Oh, really?
But that, I don't know when that was from, because then some of the solicitations are just Legion of Superheroes. So I guess we'll wait and see, but I'm all for it. And then the last thing, as we are recording this, or as this episode is released, right prior to this, I'm pretty sure my idea is to release a Legion Project promo video that I created and showed to Eric.
It's so cool.
Way, yeah, as a way to kind of, I don't know, self-promote a little bit. So, as I said, I'm sort of talking to my future self, and then when we do release this, it'll be me talking to my past self. Hopefully I've released that by now. It's short enough that, it can be dumped on Twitter or Instagram or elsewhere, YouTube, It's just a celebration of not only the Legion of Superheroes, but the Legion of Superheroes in this Baxter run, and especially as it pertains to our podcast. So look for that. Maybe if by the time we release this in our show notes, maybe we can put links to wherever it is we're going to dump that. So I'll have to think about that, But look for it. Go watch it. Spread it around. It's fun. I like it. And pat myself on the back for that.
You did well. You did a very good job on that. I could never create something like that. So
okay, I think it's enough preamble here. 15 minutes in. Let's get to it. Legion of Superheroes 26. Let's roll out.
Issue 26, titled "Illusion" by Paul Levitz, Greg LaRocque, and Mark DiCarlo are the artists, with again an inking assist from Arn Starr, John Costanza, Carl Gafford, Karen Berger, with a cover by Steve Lytle. In this issue, Legionnaire and Fatal Five members alike react to the revelation that Sensor Girl is the now unconscious Projectra of Orando. While everyone is distracted, Dream Girl executes an escape plan. At Shanghala, Brainiac 5 tells the others that he has deduced Sensor Girl's secret and that Projectra has returned with even greater powers. After narrowly escaping the Fatal Five, our heroes on Stratus contemplate their next move. Projectra awakens and informs the group that the Emerald Empress has cut off all outgoing communications from the planet. The cavalry is not coming. Meanwhile, the Fatal Five continue their search for the haggard Legionnaires. Back at Legion HQ, Element Lad tells the rest of the Legion who Sensor Girl is, just in case we missed that tidbit previously, and White Witch appears to tell them that she must go to the Sorcerer's World, which she does post-haste. Back on Stratus, Projectra explains her new powers and why she rejoined the Legion, but then the Fatal Five find the Legionnaires and another fight ensues. While Emerald Empress tortures Colossal Boy by breaking some of his fingers one by one, Mentala forces Flare to destroy a satellite, thus restoring communications. Empress realizes this and murders Mentala, an act so foul that Saturn Girl senses it back on Earth. The Fatal Five resume their attack on the Legionnaires, gaining the upper hand, and then Sensor Girl turns the tables, enabling her to trick Persuader to incapacitate Flare and Caress. She then nullifies Persuader in more ways than one. Sensor Girl then turns her sights on to Emerald Empress, but Caress comes to and attacks Sensor Girl with her acidic touch. Just as Emerald Empress starts blasting Sensor Girl with the Emerald Eye of Ekron, Dawnstar swoops in, grabbing Caress. Wildfire fires on the eye. It's too many syllables. And Sensor Girl belts Emerald Empress unconscious before she too collapses. The end.
I'm going to keep that mistaken.
Whenever I do these synopses, I write them out, and then, like the day before we were going to record, I go through it again to make sure that it says what I want it to say. And for some reason, I totally just missed that that repetition. Ugh.
Well, let's go right to general thoughts before we get to the covers, because some of my general thoughts might feed into the covers, so I don't want to work backwards.
Interesting.
On that.
Okay.
Yeah, so, Legion of Superheroes 26 versus Tales of the Legion issue number 351. Legion of Superheroes 26 by Steve Lytle, and Tales 351 by Kurt Swan and Dick Giordano. Wait, what am I doing? I'm doing the covers already. Jesus.
I was wondering where you're going with this.
I know, because I'm looking at my notes. Dummy. Okay. General thoughts. I'm excited. I'm a Twitter. I guess I'm just, I'm anxious to hear your thoughts. Let's go general thoughts. What did you think of this issue?
Well, just like a lot of these Legion issues I'm finding is that, if I had read this once, I'd be like, oh, okay, that was an issue. But then upon reread and studying the issue, it's like, oh, here's all these interesting little meaty bits that I really enjoyed. But I have to say, I'm keeping this very general. a very unsatisfying ending to this issue. What about you?
Ooh, to this issue or to the whole mystery?
No, for this issue.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I thought when you were saying that, you read it once and then you read it a bunch of times, I thought there would be a different outcome. I actually, I really liked it. I really liked some of the stuff in it. One of my problems with sometimes with like large stories, large events in comics, events in general, like real events, like crossover events, or when they do a big annual superhero slugfest or whatever. One of my big problems with it is whenever you get to like the end of whatever that story is, the resolution, there's like no resolution, right? Like you get to like the big reveal or the big fight at the end, and then everything wraps up in like 2 pages, right? Crisis is that way, actually. When you read issue 12, there's a huge battle against the Anti-Monitor, and then there's maybe like 8 to 9 pages of sort of, well, here's the rest of the DC universe now that we finished the Crisis, and it's kind of like, oh my god, which is sort of understandable because they were going to eventually explain it all in their titles. But there's been other events too where like the defeat of the villain happens on page 21, and then they only give pages 22 and 23 for resolution, and then you're supposed to be done with the event, right? So reading the reveal in last issue, the build up to the reveal in 25, and then could not remember what 26 was about. And yes, it is also exactly everything I talked about. It's a big fight, and then it just ends, right? And I guess maybe I'm being biased because I know the next issue is also the resolution in one of the stories. So, and that's why in our notes I've been saying, let's go up to 27 before we do anything else, to wrap up the Sensor Girl stuff. But I feel even with this issue, I like the answers that we got. I like the big ideas that we got and some of the reactions. And it's kind of nice because I felt like the whole issue was just sort of screamed Sensor Girl, right? If we weren't actually reading about Sensor Girl, people were talking about Sensor Girl. And I walked away with this impressed even with some of the notions that Paul Levitz is throwing out. Again, a little bit biased because I think I'm throwing those impressions through a modern eye and not a 1986 eye. But I think that kind of speaks for the issue.
Yeah.
So I dug it. I kind of was like, ooh, this like appeals. This is like a lot of why I like to read comics in this issue. So, so I liked it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest perhaps that I didn't like the issue overall because I, like I said, there's once you kind of overlook the multiple fight scenes, just generally speaking, I mean, there's a lot of interesting character interactions, and there's a backstory. Of course, we get quote unquote some answers to the mystery, but I picked up on some things between. From a writing perspective or a character development perspective, I picked up on some things that I really dug. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that stuff.
Yeah, and if you're referencing some, you reference those fight scenes. I mean, there's a few that I'm like, come on, Greg, give me some better sequentials here because I know I can understand that Tellus telekinetically lifted Dream Girl out of the way before Persuader chopped her. But the artwork doesn't help that. Like there's little moments like that kind of frustrated me because you just know they could have been better defined. And there were some comic book tropes, like the Legion and the Fatal Five get split, so they both decide to just go like on a little break, right? And Emerald Empress is like, no, don't go after him just yet. It's like, okay, come on. Like,
Yeah.
that's, superhero 101, superhero
Right.
comics 101 there, like whatever. So I get that. Yeah. So on that angle, I might agree with you. I'm sure we'll have some similar thoughts. So, okay. Now the covers. Legion of Superheroes 26, Tales 351. I'm just going to start by saying part of me feels like I don't really have a favorite. They're fine. They're like both fine. The Fatal 5 shot by Steve Lido on 26, beautiful. It's great. That's a lovely image. Mm-hmm. The fight between Sensor Girl and Emerald Empress on Tales 351. Kurt Swan, Dick Giordano. Nothing that's going to set the comics world on fire, but it's fine, and it certainly means more to the issue than the Legion cover does. My first note was they should have swapped Legion 25 and Legion 26 if they were going to show a image of the Fatal 5 for this issue, which they are fighting, and they are a Fatal 5. They actually do kill someone, but I was like, that's a weird poster-like cover for this issue.
Yeah.
I thought.
You and I are, I think, in perfect sync with this. I felt exactly the same way. It's just, from a draftsman's evaluation, is what I'm trying to say, they're fine. Both perfectly fine covers. But they what is the cover is supposed to say something about the issue, and it's neither of them really capture the issue in any great sense. So they were fine, but
Yeah, I guess part of that might be our own fault for trying to get hyped, and
that's true.
I don't know. There was just something about it. Like I really felt like this issue, had it shown up an issue earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. That's when they did attack. That's when, and then you could have had 25 on this one with Emerald Empress, Sensor Girl in Emerald Empress's arms.
Yeah.
The reveal, the Legionnaires. It just means something to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for 25, it only really means something to the cliffhanger. And then the Kurt Swan one is fun. I feel out of the two, it's the one that most matches the story, which is kind of unfair to say because the Fatal 5 is in the story. But.
Yeah, but this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, though. That I think, and this is why if I had to choose one, I would choose the Tales cover, even though I'm not the the biggest Kurt Swan fan, because it is representative of this animosity, this struggle between these two characters, Sensor Girl and Emerald Empress, that has been building up ever since they first met. Mm-hmm. And I forget whatever issue that was, where we talked about this a few times now, that connection that these two characters seem to have. And so, based on that alone, I'm giving the nod to the Tales cover.
Yeah, if I had to pick, I think I agree. And that's super rare.
Yeah.
Not that we agree, that
right.
that we both pick the Tales cover.
Mm-hmm.
And you love the Fatal 5.
I do. I do. I don't know that I love this Fatal 5.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
They look good on that cover, though.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from that.
Exactly. Like I said, Lytle did a great job. Oh, and I should just to be complete, at least according to comics.org, Anthony Tolan also had a hand in this number 26 cover.
Okay.
And he also colored the Tales cover, so I thought that was a nice continuity.
Yeah, we've been talking about this since Legion of Superheroes 21. That's when the two of them first met.
Okay.
So outside of that, if we want to, really dig in, Eric and I, before we recorded, we were like, how do we talk about this? Do we go page by page? Do we just think broadly? I think there's so much that we have been holding off discussing because we wanted to wait until the reveal. And I feel like with all of the background information we've been getting from the compendium, or maybe like a back issue magazine from Tomorrow's, or interviews, this whole decision of not making Censor Girl be Supergirl anymore, and then talking about, well, when did that switch happen? And then when it did happen, as Lytle has said a couple times, it really was Paul Levitz's idea and his baby to run, that Censor Girl would be Princess Projectra. And nobody has pinpointed the exact issue where that change happens, right? When they finally got the decree from on high that said you cannot use Supergirl. How early into this mystery did that actually happen? Because I feel like there's evidence in a lot of the stories that we've read, like that fight between Sunboy and Dr. Regulus in issue 15, I think it was, felt like that was Supergirl, because they were dealing with a lot of the senses. But yet as we go on and suddenly this kind of regal posture starts to happen and we start to get a little more clues in the dialogue and other places, clearly along the way, it's obviously Projectra. And I really liked in this issue the cap that it gives to the very first 5 issues of this entire run, where Karate Kid dies, Projectra snaps Nemesis Kid's neck, she acts all very queen-like, she tells the Legion to go pound sand, and disappears. And that Levitz was able to use this as a way to take the next step on that story, and what he decides to say in this issue with it, and some other things, I really liked it. And then I really liked that it ends with Censor Girl just punching Emerald Empress, and then collapsing, and there's Wildfire and Dawnstar going, what the F just happened? Because I feel like, talking about this whole idea about writing large stories, there's something very metaphysical about the exhaustion of the ending, of like her being a Legionnaire through to the end, fighting the Fatal Five on her own, and just collapsing under the weight of it all. Not only the weight of the battle, but the weight of holding this identity, and holding this secret for the good and the bad, as she kind of implies in a lot of the dialogue. And then readers too, like, we've been going through this since issue 14. And for it to end on that note, I laughed. I kind of was like, okay, that's fun and that's funny and not meant to be funny, but it kind of makes sense. And now I'm really looking forward to, another story where there's going to be even more resolution to it, like it's kind of like we're living. The reveal was one thing last issue, right? It was just the reveal. And then this issue sort of swims in it, and we have to look at it in all different angles, and sometimes judge ourselves by what Paul Levitz is saying in a couple of debates that they have, with her identity. So I don't know. These are all just sort of like rambling big thoughts that I just it's one of the first issues I've been excited about since like the Mon-El issue. And in issue 23, and we've been really up and down with a lot of these issues, since Greg LaRocque took over. So, all right. So I don't know. What do you make of any of that, or give me your own thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that the way you describe the very end of the issue, because I did not have the same reaction to that. But given what you just said, that gives that ending a bit more weight. That I just did, it's just something I hadn't considered before. Well, again, the weight of it, and in more ways than one. So that's good. I'm pleased you shared that with me, because that takes away the bitter taste in my mouth, so to speak, of this ending, just because I did not appreciate that little jokey manner in which it was presented. And then just you like the punch, I didn't like the punch, and mostly because the real. I don't know if we want to jump right into this, Peter, but the real I got to come up with a better word than weight, but the real weight of what Censor Girl does in this issue occurs 2 pages before, and then you get that punch out, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that works. So, but yeah, I totally agree with you that this issue contains a lot of really cool elements, and I think for the most part, Levitz and Company really does bring them together in a nice, satisfying way. Maybe not as strong as some other issues. Since you brought up the Mon-El issue, as I'm thinking back on that one, that maybe was a little more satisfying from a holistic point of view. The whole issue, the way that everything was moving, the story pieces, the art. to the resolution. This one probably not so much, and I think it was just really in the way, because nothing is wrong with the plot. Necessarily, it's just the way that they decided to break up the story on the pages. The different scenes that I think just kind of that interruption and also just the fight scene, and then there's another fight scene, and then we have a final fight scene. Just kind of takes away from the overall impact of this particular issue for me.
Yeah. Makes you wonder, that we're in this new era where there's more pages per story. So, that can be good, but it could also be bad because you got to fill those pages.
Yeah. It's kind of like to do a comparison to television. It's like, do you do a 22 episode season or do you do a 13 episode season? And what that means in terms of the storytelling.
Right.
Yeah, it's that you don't get filler episodes with that shorter season. So, I've never been a fan of shorter page comics, because you want more bang for the buck. But I don't know, maybe this is an argument for not having those extra pages.
I can remember, wasn't there like certain episodes of The Office that went on for like an hour or something, and it was like, yeah, this is just not the same. So,
yeah.
Well, I think, and I also think too, like we're sort of reading it in the way it was published, month to month to month. I wonder what a straight read, you go right to the reveal from 25, right into this, and then into 27. Probably all we would react differently, I'm sure.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I have a question for you, but it's sometimes it's hard to talk about this stuff because I want to talk about it from my perspective now, as a comic book reader who has 40 some years of reading comic books and loving the Legion for pretty much that entire time. But then I also want to put myself into the shoes and mindset of someone that was reading that comic at that time. And it's just a weird dichotomy that every time I read one of these issues, I'm trying to place 2 feet in, or my feet in 2 different time zones, so to speak. But I really am curious, because a lot of the reactions of the readers in the letter columns was, either providing guesses as to who Censor Girl was, or just reactions to this reveal. And I'm curious, Peter, if you can put yourself in those shoes, was it obvious to you who Censor Girl was, or was it? Or were you like me, where I honestly, because I'm a dumb reader, I don't think I would have guessed this at all. I would have probably gone with a Censor Girl thing, or this is just a totally new character.
Yeah. No, I didn't guess it at the time because I just wasn't experienced in the Legion by that point. I only started reading the Legion in 1983. She wasn't even around at that point. If I got that Legion annual where she got married to Karate Kid, it was as a back issue later. And she pops up in the Eye for an Eye storyline, but again, I didn't know enough about her to warrant her as a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I was probably one of those that was like, oh, okay, I could see that they clearly wanted it to be Supergirl, but I wasn't one of those that's like, oh, I hope it's Supergirl, which some people were in those letter columns. I think what I liked about those letter columns too is like not only were they trying to guess, but they were trying to guess why, and so many of them connected it back to not only Karate Kid's death, but just the culture of her planet, which was something I had to read up on for this issue. And, as I read this issue for our episode, there's a lot of it that I kind of was like, wow, I just don't remember any of this. And the last strong memory I have from 1986 is just the reveal from the end of 25. And a little bit about her new power description in this issue. I do sort of remember that. As I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that. So from here on out, I may have read some of these issues, but my remembrance of them, it's just totally gone. So we're kind of on the same page. If you're reading some of these issues for the first time,
mm-hmm.
I may not be reading them new, but I just don't remember what my reaction was anymore. So call that old age or they just didn't resonate, right? Like the reveal of Sense Girl resonates. The next issue, this issue, does not. So, and I guess that's to be expected on some level.
Yeah, I just having read a bunch of the letter writers' thoughts about this, it made me think, boy, I'm really dumb because I would not have guessed this was Projectra at all.
Well, before we get into like some of the clues and some of that,
mm-hmm.
What did you think of her explanation? Or you could say Paul Levitz's explanation of why she created the identity and what her new powers are.
Well, I mean, so the explanation, which is that, after Val died, she, as she says, I went into retreat to try to re-sanctify myself as queen. I wept and prayed and found myself most sorely wanting. I had brought doom to Orlando, and to my heart's desire there was no reason to blame technology or other worlds, only me. And so, I don't know, that while that, that easily sets up her journey to the point to where she is now, I didn't really find anything interesting about that revelation, because we've not been given anything that Sensor Girl has done that relates back to that, other than she is a member of the Legion, which, extrapolating that out, she's, I guess, combating evil. How does rejoining the Legion and her hiding her identity as Sensor Girl, how does that re-sanctify herself? I don't feel like we've been given enough to warrant any kind of connection between what she says and what we've seen.
What about the added dialogue of, so she says a journey of penance, and then says, without the riches or prestige of Orlando to ease my way. Yeah. So it's not only just about the identity and the journey, but that she doesn't, it's almost like giving up her station in a way,
Mm-hmm. Except, again, what impact has that had on her? We don't know, because we've Levitz has kept her at more than arm's length with us as readers, and so she is, in a very large sense, she's masked just like she is on the page, but she's masked from us. And how do you have that kind of connection with a character if you don't see how they react, how they feel, what are their motivations? We're just now finding out what the motivation is for her, and so I just, it's like, okay, sure, she's telling us this, but we haven't been shown it. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there.
No, I see what you're saying. That actually leads me to, Colossal Boy has they have an interesting exchange right before she says all that. I don't know what pages, it's like 13 or 14. And he says, Jack, Censor Girl, it's been impossible for us to figure you out since you rejoined. And she even says, I suppose that's only fair. Maybe I even wanted it to be so. The way she kind of is hiding in this identity. What does she say about when you see the panel with her and Saturn Girl? Let's see. The illusion of Censor Girl both served to make my powers more effective by hiding the fact that so many were simply illusions, and simplified my return. Let's see. Where was I going with that?
Is it the what Dream Girl says on the next page?
Well, I mean, I like what Dream Girl says, but she's sort of interrupting her thought process there. I mean, I think that's a different discussion I want to have too, because good. I think Dream Girl's right.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to hit this notion of, like what you're talking about. Like, I think you're right. I think short of just saying, I wonder what next issue is going to, because remember, like, with issue 25, we were like, or even issue 24, where they were like, we know your identity, but we really didn't get the reveal then. And then in issue 25, we got, who is Mystery Girl, right? And I guess this issue is more, how is Censor Girl, excuse me, I keep saying Mystery Girl, and a little bit of the why, but I wonder if the why she is who she is what Levitz is going to save for her character. Otherwise, if you give it all away, then you kind of lose something for future storylines.
Sure. Yeah. And maybe I'm being unfair in my assessment at this point. It's just that, like I said, we haven't been given anything really to go on here other than this quick. It's 2 pages of explanation really, and not even that is But so this sets up, and this is sorry, I'm jumping around here. This has been one of the most frustrating things about this run of Legion, is that Levitz sets up these things that I find really interesting, and then so he gives us this promise of something interesting, I should say, and then does he deliver? And that's where I'm kind of, it's like, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so I get more excited about the idea that he's presenting than the execution.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some value in, remember the end of Eye for an Eye storyline where we're looking at the funeral pyre for Karate Kid, and one guard says to the other, "What the hell was all that for?" Right? And and then I did research because I was curious why Jackie said, there was no reason to blame technology or other worlds, only me. I was like, why did she say that? And then I did some research and I was like, oh, okay, right. Orlando is this feudal world that shuns technology, that shuns off-worlders, that lives in a society that's ruled by kings and queens, dabbles in magic. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And And I looked up the notion of I just typed in Google. I said journey of penance, right? And oddly enough, there were some religious links that came up. Like these. They don't call them journey of penance, but it was like worded a different way, and then it made me think of like in theological terms, like here is someone that brought me. It kind of makes sense where she's like, she brought this to a rando. She is their ruler. Who's to say that her people don't think that she's to blame? Like, so I get the impulse behind it God, I'm trying to I know there's a story, like a literature story out there, like a novel or something that kind of is the same thing where someone gets banished and they have to, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking like Hercules is 12 labors of Hercules or something like that. So I think that's why it resonates with me, because it feels like those are the reasons, right? Or it feels like that's the impulse that Levitz is trying to connect backwards.
Yeah.
And you're right, that the potential of this character now to be as powerful as she is, to have this identity, want to keep the identity, and how the other teammates have to react, which is a whole bunch of other notes I have for this issue. I really liked. I don't know what I'm trying to say. In counter to what you said, I don't know. I don't want to always have to be in counter. I feel like those pages. I guess they were enough for me to go, okay, that'll get us through this issue, and then knowing that there's more issues. If this was like the last issue of the series altogether, sure, I'm sure I would be like, oh man, I want to know more. But
well, yeah, I don't think we are necessarily disagreeing here with this scene. It's just slightly different perspectives on it. But
sure.
Again, the promise here, like you just said, why does she keep this identity now? She says, well, like you said, the illusion both served to make my powers more effective by hiding that they were illusions and simplified my return. Yeah, sure, that totally makes sense. But why keep up the illusion? What does it have to do with this journey of penance? And how, again, like I said, how does her being here serve the people of Arando? How does that make her a better queen for them? And then again, that is the promise of what could come is, what is the resolution to that? And so again, those are the things that I'm like, okay, now we got something really cool with this reveal. Now we're getting, because this is where we're getting into the character,
right,
of Sensor Girl, and Projectra has never been more interesting to me than she is as somebody else now. So yeah. I'm digging where this could go. I want to know more about her and how the Legionnaires will react to this. Right. I don't know. Is this maybe I'm stretching? Is this sort of like someone? No, that's not it. Never mind. It's just like learning a secret that someone has tried to keep secret for so long, and then how do you react to that? That something intensely personal to that person. And so how do you then treat them going forward? And they don't want to be known as that person that they were before. They want to be known as this person, sort of, kind of. So it's a weird mesh of things, of interpersonal stuff that I think just could make a really cool character stew.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see your point about, like, why joining the Legion, why coming back, what's that part of the journey, like that. Yeah, I guess that's something we just have to sort of wait if it ever gets explained, as you mentioned way back. Part of the conversation that Dream Girl wants to have about, it's very convenient that you can come back in another identity and skirt our bylaws about killing someone, like that was way sharp of Dream Girl and Paul Levitz to kind of drop that, Before we get to that, though, I want to piggyback on what you just said, because I think you were going to go this way, but maybe not. Like, this is where I talk about in my notes, like reading this through the eyes of someone in 2020. This has everything in its dialogue and in the way that Censor Girl is talking and the way they talk to her that is very real when you talk about trans rights and you know, a person who and I don't know all the correct terminology, but there's something called dead naming, right? Like when you call someone by the name that they were given at their birth, but then they have their own name they want to be referred to as, right? Or even misgendering, right? Like when someone has different pronouns, because that dialogue, that language is right here on the page. So
well, that's kind of where I was going.
I thought you would. I thought, yeah.
But I didn't, like you just said, I don't know enough about it to really speak to it and use the correct language regarding it. So I wanted to skirt it. So I'm glad you explained that a little more. So
right, and I'm not saying this is what Paul Levitz is. I'm not trying to say that. When you filter it through the lens of now, there's some really honest questions here that her teammates have. I mean, Tella starts it off. When she wakes up, Dream Girl says Projectra, and Tella says, "Would you prefer we call you by that name now? I am terribly confused." Dream Girl says, "Never mind that. Are you all right, Jackie? Physically, yes, but I sense the terrible pain we stand in." And then she's changing back into Censor Girl, and Polar Boy says, "Hey, what's with the illusion? We know who you are now, Projectra." So now, they constantly still calling her Projectra, Jackie. And she says, "You knew who I was, Polar Boy. There are reasons I am Censor Girl now, and reasons why I can assure you that if we are to survive, we must do so on our own." Yada, yada, yada. Where's the other bit of dialogue that really speaks to this? Okay, so I guess for me, it's that Tellus was aware enough of that notion that she has this new identity, that he's willing to, that he even asks the question, right? And it's kind of interesting that it's coming from someone like Tellus, who has always shown to be sort of like naive and in a very different way than sort of like Block. Like he puts his tail in his mouth several times when he talks, but it's because he's just unsure. I don't know. There's just a lot of sort of. It's just interesting. It's just an interesting notion that she is more comfortable as Censor Girl than she is Projectra at this point, because that to be Projectra means a station, means privilege, wealth, a dead husband, a world that she should be queen of. But to be Censor Girl means all the things you're asking, like her penance, her time with the Legion. Here's the thing. Maybe she thinks of her time as a member of the Legion as a bad thing. Like she was the one who said, "Get off my planet," in issue 5, where she was like, "All right, go." And I think she was really negative about telling them to leave. So there, imagine that you're, imagine you, like if I had a wife was in the military and then she died in the military and then I go join the military, like, what I mean? Like maybe there would be some unresolved things there. And so she's putting herself back into the organization that, you could argue, killed her husband.
Right. And put her entire planet at peril.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're right to hit on the notion of identity and that she's very adamant about keeping that identity, because it means something right now. And I think it means something to her. And I think all that language is so rife for someone who has a better eye for that particular notion of trans rights and all that than I have. But the dialogue is really kind of interesting as it points that way.
Okay, here's a related thought, I guess. So if she is, and I think I agree with you in regards to why she's in the Legion. This is a weird form of penance for her. But she is masked in more ways than one. She's wearing a mask as part of this illusion, but the illusion itself is a mask, right? And what do masks represent? Someone who is hiding something, their identity or whatever. So if she were truly out for, or not out for, truly trying to account herself for her, her quote unquote sins, why is she hiding? Why isn't she not, as Projectra in the Legion and as a representative of Orlando and dealing with this more directly, I guess? And
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that goes back to what she says about she without the riches or prestige of Projectra, because then she gets treated like anybody else. If she's really going on a journey of penance, but everybody treats her like royalty, then that's not going to work.
Well, royalty and also a widow, of some a fellow legionnaire. So,
here. Let me give you this. You this. Think of how everybody's. How like we've been saying for the longest time. I've been saying in some of these issues. Boy, the Legion, they're just like right away just saying she's going to join the Fatal Five and she's a mystery and she's bad. Brainiac 5 is like, look what she's doing to the Legion, right? But we've been saying she hasn't really been doing any of that. Or what has she been doing other than keeping a secret that has really made the Legion sort of go, we got to watch out for her. You know what I mean, right? So, in essence, they're kind of treating her in a way that she's never been treated before, right? Because she's a princess. How dare they treat her like that? But what does she say to Element Lad when he's like, look, I totally respect you. I see who you are. I understand this. And what does she say? I have new respect for you. Mm-hmm. Because he treated Sensor Girl not as a mask, but as a person. Mm-hmm. Right? And so imagine that you stick yourself in a mask, you put yourself among people they treat you like junk because the Legionnaires are brats. And you have to live with that. And that's why she's standoffish. And you have a green-skinned guy going into your room looking at your personal stuff, right? And you have everybody sort of going, well, who are you? How can you do that? And probably also feeling, realizing that your very presence is causing chaos. And then Element Lad is the one that kind of, says, okay, I get it. Do I need to be worried? So like, yeah, that's penance, man. That's gotta suck for her, right? Because the old Projectra probably would be like, if she was Projectra and they were doing all that, she would just, I don't know. I haven't read enough of her, but she probably would be like, you're just poor peons, But here she's got to throw herself into the middle of all of this and not scream out, I know you trust me. I am good. But that's not her role right now. That's not her function.
Well, yeah, and how I totally see that. How can she go on that journey of penance if she is I'm going to switch on this, masked by the reactions of her teammates as who she was. Their perception of her as the queen, as a former teammate, as a widow. So yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, because we don't get many reactions from the Legionnaires in this issue. What does Cam say? He's like, oh, that's a fantastic identity or illusion or whatever. Fascinating, quite a disguise. Lightning Lass is like, huh? Block is his usual, I fear I shall never understand humans. Shrinking Violet, what next? Because she's kind of always on the I don't want to say bitter, but she's on the kind of negative angle. Invisible Kid, we must still find her though, Element Lad again, not necessarily. She might be on personal business because they don't know what's going on with the battle and all that. And then it all gets interrupted anyway. And even, the dialogue from the Legionnaires that did see the reveal, at first they're calling her Jeckie and Projectra, but Colossal Boy, right before she gives the explanation, he does correct himself. He says Jek Sensor Girl. He stops himself and says Sensor Girl. Like right there again, to go back to the identity issue, he is being respectful, which is what you want your teammates to be. But now that it's all out in the open, there's a learning curve, and she's giving them so much information, but it's going to take time. Yeah. So you're right. There's a lot of interesting things that I'm glad that not all the answers are here, because I'm hoping that it means something throughout the rest of the run. And what's really interesting, I won't say the detail, but there's an interesting Sensor Girl thing in the very last issue that I won't say any more than that. That is, I guess we'll get to when we get to issue 63.
Well, yeah. See, I have read issue 63, and I don't remember her involvement at all. So that'll be fun to revisit after all these years. Yeah. I just to I maybe put a cap on this part of the conversation, but I wanted to tie it back to her newfound powers.
Yes.
So I think we were going to get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I read that bit before explaining, how she got to this point. And so, as she describes here, in that instant of revelation, I found myself surrounded by my ancestors, oracles of the centuries before. They brought a gift to me, a gift of power. And this is what I was referring to, or at least Brainiac 5 was referring to when I did the synopsis. Now I could not only be able to cast illusions and see through my own, which I thought was a very interesting point that she made, but I would see through much of the illusion of the world. And just like us, Colossal Boy is totally confused. Don't you see, Colossal Boy? There is only one universe around us, and it is so simple. Yet we are hampered in how we see it by illusions of distance, of density of objects, barriers that are not real. Not if your senses have been freed of them. That was my new gift. And then they get in. She gets into the journey of penance that we've been talking about. So we get an explanation of sorts of how she could do all those things that Timberwolf said that no one person can do many times. But again, so this is where I want to tie it back to what we were just talking about, because she says, and see through my own illusions. And yet she continues to be an illusion. And I wonder, obviously this journey has really just begun for her. And what happens along that journey, I hope we get some more things. But she certainly has not, she's not paid that price of penance. She's not finished that journey. And I wonder if part of that journey is, just like this, going through the stages of grief, she's not at acceptance yet. Not for the death of her husband, and certainly not for the impact of what happened to her people. And so, does she ever revert back to being Projectra? Does she finish that journey? And considering what you just revealed about, or reminded us about the final issue of this run, sounds like perhaps maybe she never does. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah, and Levitt's track record of Shrinking Violet, of Lightning Lass, and now Projectra. I think if she did go backwards, it would be a mistake, right? Because
to go back to being to what she was before all of this happened. Yeah,
yeah,
that would be dumb.
right. She's obviously changed, and hindsight, right? We know that this whole Censor Girl identity even exists in the Gary Frank, Jeff Johns Legion of Superheroes story arc, right? Like,
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, it gets carried over for a long time. So, but then what? In 0 Hour, she's a snake, I think.
That's right. Making them more alien, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I'm like, oh, she's a snake? What? Although, again, if you want to think, if I want to keep the whole identity thing going, like, that's interesting, right? Like, what she says about the illusions of herself. I mean, I really do want to put this in the hands of someone who has better knowledge or who experienced all this, who has experience with self-identifying and things like that, because that's a huge question that anybody could ask. You know what I mean? Like, the illusions of yourself. Like, woo. Now I would not only be able to cast illusions and see through my own illusions. What were you going to say?
Well, it doesn't have to just be relating to people that are maybe struggling with their own identities, but I mean that's a very universal human thing too. It's like, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose?
Right. God, 2020 has been all about that. Jeez. What's my purpose?
Yeah, there is a lot of weight to this, and what's really cool about this issue and is the strength of these little conversations, these reveals, amidst the typical the rote fight scenes that we get, the typical superhero fight scenes with the villains. Mm-hmm. So it really makes up for that in this issue and elevates it to a degree that is a bit more than maybe some previous issues that we've talked about.
Yeah.
What did you think? I mean, since we're talking about her powers,
yeah.
Just from a character or a superhero character, Legion, Paul Levitz coming up with this standpoint. Projectra has been, I was about to say, one of the weaker Legionnaires, because potentially she should be one of the more powerful ones, but because you can't be too powerful as an individual in the Legion, her abilities are constantly, her illusions are constantly seen through by various characters. In the very first appearance of the Fatal Five, and we talked about this earlier, and it's echoed in this issue, which I loved, by the way.
Yeah, right. Persuader. Yeah, he's like,
yeah,
you're the first Legionnaire I met.
Yeah, exactly. And he literally cuts through her illusions with his axe. And so we get that echo again here as well. And so there's that aspect of her. She's an illusion caster. And now Levitz has come up with this angle, to see through the illusions, and also to which she does not say here, but what we have seen is that she's able to maybe cut off that perception in others. So I'm thinking back to that previous where you mentioned where Brainiac 5, broke into her quarters, and she discovers that, and suddenly he goes blind, and then he's outside after she's moved him out there, and we see what she can do beyond that in this issue, which I thought was probably one of the more emotionally satisfying pieces of this issue. So I can't wait to talk about that. But she is. This is great power, and I'm really curious now. Besides the things that we've already seen her do, what does that really mean? What kind of an impact will she have as a team member now with these abilities? And how much is Levitz and company going to play with this to see what she can really do, and how she can contribute to the overall team?
Right. And I guess, we haven't really been told that what's the timeline from when she starts this journey, when she gets her powers to now. She might be developing them as she goes. She might not even know, right? So put on like a headcanon kind of, put this all through like the headcanon filter. When they thought Sensor Girl was Supergirl, you could just say, well, that was just her power slowly developing. So when we first got Sensor Girl in those early issues, they were sort of her sensing things from afar, which was explained as kind of like X-ray vision if it was going to be Supergirl, or maybe super hearing or whatever. Occasionally she would black out the surrounding area. That could be an illusion, But then eventually they got deeper and deeper until we get what you said here, what she does to persuade her, and it's like, okay, well, maybe part of this journey is just her coming to terms with what she can do with these powers. And when you create a new identity for yourself, or you start to feel, maybe part of this is like her starting to realize, what I should say is, I'm hoping that we see things where she starts to realize that this is really who she is. And Levitz even mentioned that in one of the letter columns, where he kind of referenced back to her first appearance in regards to her powers. And I don't remember that first appearance. I know I read it for one of these episodes, but I just don't remember it. And, it's very much the Lightning Lass thing all over again, where she started out as lightning based, but she was impersonating her brother, and then gets powers from Dream Girl for light powers, make things super light, and then gets her lightning abilities back again, but it's as herself, right? We had that conversation where she's like joining the Legion because she wants to, not because she's impersonating someone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really could be something here along this way too, where this identity, these new I love that notion. I don't know where Levitz came up with it, what he was reading, if he was like listening to the Dalai Lama, I don't know. But to see through the illusion of the world,
yeah,
holy, that's fantastic. I think that's fantastic. Like the illusion of distance.
It's very metaphysical in a way, right?
Right.
Levitz is, I think he's really just reaching for something that sounds so cool, but does it pay off?
Oh, I think it does. I think it does. Because he, what's funny about, he sort of dabbled in this. Remember when, I think it was the Timberwolf issue, when he's going to the planet to execute Karate Kid's will, and there's like some doorway of reality nexus thing. Remember we talked about that? That never shows up again. Makes me wonder, like, he is writing a book about the future. I mean, these are things that they should be talking about in the future.
Yes.
So, yeah, I really like that, and it really starts to, what it also reminded me of? This is stupid. The 2009 Star Trek reboot, is that when it was, the J.J. Abrams version, where Prime Timeline Spock and Chris Pine meet Scotty, that version of Scotty, and he's like, oh, they're talking about the transwarp whatever, and then Spock sits at a computer and he goes, here it is, and then Simon Pegg sits down and he goes, oh, I never thought that I should think of it as space is the thing that's moving, not the ship. Right? You remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that little sequence? That's what this kind of reminds me of. Like,
yeah.
We sort of think of things very literally. Superman, even Supergirl, use telescopic vision to see far, and they use microscopic vision to see into atoms, and they use X-ray vision to see through walls. And here's Sensor Girl saying, there are no walls. You should be able to just, I've been giving the power to just see, you know? So that's why my brain kind of went, I was like, oh my God, I remember that. I think I there's like a small part of me that remembers that. And now I want to be like, you know, can she see the she did talk about one universe, but I would love it if she would be able to see through like many worlds, and could she see through the illusion of someone lying?
Yes.
You know,
yeah. The potentials here for what this could mean. Yeah. You know, this could be, she could be like the new Starboy when he first was introduced and he had all these incredible powers, and then they reduced it down to just density manipulation. So it's the potential here is so interesting. And it doesn't. It kind of reminds me. It could be. Is this Levitt's DC's cosmic awareness?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it could kind of play on the same level. I mean, she in that issue 15 where she sensed that the battle was beginning, or there was another issue where somebody got hurt and she was like, "Oh my God, somebody's getting hurt," and they were like, "How do you know this?" Like, you know. Yeah. By the way, this was also the issue. This is like, how can we have all these conversations, but then I only realized it in issue 26 that Censor Girl SG is Supergirl. Why did I not think of that before?
Well, I will say I did think of that before, but only because as I make notes, I sometimes will type initials for
SG,
the characters,
right?
And so I would do SG. I'm like, oh,
right. That's the only reason why, because I have it right here in my notes. SG. Oh, also stands for Supergirl. I think a letter column person might have said that too, but I just don't know why it didn't resonate. Okay, so what do you think of Dream Girl's little comment about skirting the rules? You know, for killing someone. What'd you think of that?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think Dream Girl gets the award for the MVP award for this issue.
Yeah.
You know, not only does she have this caustic wit, you know, she's the one that saves them at the beginning of the issue. You know, she comes up with a plan. You know, she definitely has leadership qualities, even more potential than I think that we have seen thus far. And this is, you know, if Levitz wants to make the rounds with the female characters, as he's been doing, as you mentioned, Lightning Lass, Shrinking Violet, Censor Girl, Dream Girl, I think is the next great candidate to do something more with them.
Right.
And I would, and especially considering what eventually we'll get to it, maybe in the 3rd hour mark, Peter. The interview with Greg LaRocque and his Legion Outpost idea. I have a newfound respect for Dream Girl, reading these past, I don't know, half dozen, maybe dozen or so issues, because she is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. And
she's not just the beautiful platinum blonde on Starboy's arm anymore.
Yeah.
And she is just there's just so much more to her. In fact, I almost like her in this issue more than Projectra, like I said, so far in this issue. So,
well, I think it speaks to her, like you're saying, it speaks to her character, how well it's been written. And I've been noticing this, you know, from way back when she was kissing Element Lad and you know, telling dog bark. Sorry, folks, you might hear some background noise. I don't live alone anymore. Yeah, when she, like, even going back to when she was really giving Wildfire a run for his money about deputy leadership and all this other stuff. Like, she is very she's just really been impressing me, like learning that from the who's who that she's the second or third smartest Legionnaire, and um, I've been really liking her. And I wrote down teamwork. It's just nice to see some teamwork,
Oh yeah.
because a lot of times when they fight, they just fight and they pair
Mm-hmm.
off with a villain and they just fight. But that she
Mm-hmm.
actually brought teamwork there. Um, and it probably goes to show that in this conversation about like leadership, although Element Lad comes off kind of super strong with this whole Sensor Girl stuff, boy, Dream Girl she is a great leader.
Well, and her, her comment that you talked about, your disguise also covered for that fact that you had broken the Legion code by killing. She kind of cuts through, or she cuts to the quick, which yeah, okay, I'm stretching it, but that's a kind of an illusion too, an illusion of nicety of willing ignorance to ignore that fact. And she just sees again, I apologize for stretching this metaphor, but she sees right through it and gets to the point. And interesting time to bring something like that up, but again, narratively speaking, what Levitz is doing is using that comment as a means to from the sort of top left of the page to get to the bottom right of the page, which is the death promised on the cover of the issue. A hero dies at the hands of the Fatal Five, to remind us that this is indeed coming, and we know this because it's Dream Girl. She
Right.
sees the future, and I just that scene too. Following immediately with the reveal of Sensor Girl in the Y and stuff. That I loved it. It was a great way to not just continue the plot, but then give us this what kind of moment. It's like who. Why is she not revealing it? It's just a great comic book page turner approach.
And maybe that's part of Jecky's journey, right? Like, so Dream Girl brings it up, even criticizing her by saying
Mm-hmm.
convenient, right? Like that's harsh. That's
Yeah.
And
There's
then
your penance.
Jecky being royal says it's sort of like her dipping back to her Projectra persona. I
Yes,
executed
yes.
a foul creature. Who are you to say I was wrong? And Dream Girl counters, not me, which I think is also interesting, because like then it goes to say if they would put it to a vote, Dream Girl probably, which side would Dream Girl vote for, to
Mm-hmm.
not include her or to include her. But then she says, but death can't be treated lightly, Jecky. Like, maybe Sensor Girl needs to hear that and realize,
Yes.
this is part of your journey. And then you're right. Then she starts to go into like her powers, because she says none of us really has any power over it. Royal, to throw that back in her face,
Mm-hmm.
super powered or otherwise, death has its own price. And then they're like, Dreamy, are you okay? And that's, like you said, foreshadowing for what's going to happen to Mentala. But maybe in that there's something for Jecky to learn. Even if we don't get her reaction there, it would be, I sort of interpret that dialogue as kind of like, I could see that really settling into Sensor Girl, and now she has to think about that,
Mm-hmm.
so that maybe the next time she comes into a situation with a Nemesis Kid character, would she kill that person or would she find another way?
Yeah, yeah, and this scene with Dream Girl cutting into Sensor Girl in a fashion with that matter of fact statement, right? Pairing those two up going forward, I think would be very interesting, because not just because Dream Girl says what she's thinking, and it's not always complimentary. One is, there's a couple of different things out of this that I really enjoyed. One is she's showing that she's a leader, as we just talked about. She's showing, she's not just a sympathetic teammate, like maybe some of the others will be, like Colossal Boy, for example, who would maybe forget or sidestep the issue of Projectra having killed Nemesis Kid. Dreamgirl won't do that. She will call Projectra out on that. And like I said, pairing these two up, because Dreamgirl also has this ability to see past the illusion of time. You know, to us it's a very linear thing and we can't see through it, but she can. And so it's just there's some sort of connection there, or maybe I'm just making one up, but having Dreamgirl be the Jiminy Cricket, the constant in the ear of Projectra, who, like you pointed out, she kind of regresses into her queen mode by executing that foul creature, constantly reminding Projectra of the sin that she committed before. And how can you complete a journey of penance if you don't accept the thing that you did that is wrong? And how does then Sensor Girl or Projectra deal with that conundrum of her own making? So again, it's just some really rich, interesting character interactions and just stuff that I really like this issue for that.
Yeah. Let's you joked about the 3-hour mark. This could wind up a long episode. So I think a lot of the bigger points were hit nicely, and people can react to those. And we could probably sit here for like 5 more hours and get into maybe too many hypotheticals. We'll just have to wait and see. Again, it's a reason why I'm going to issue 27, because I know there's still a little snippet more of this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that next issue. I'm just going to go through, and let's go through from the beginning of the issue. Smaller things, just I have some dumb points. I have some mini points, semi-larger points. Like the very first page, I love that you can see the Sensor Girl image over Projectra, and everyone's in shock, even Persuader. So that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, I kind of wish that they would have done that at the end of on the last page of the last issue, instead of what they did. But again, I thought that was really cool.
Do you have anything for 2 and 3?
Oh, I already mentioned Dreamgirl, her leadership. Because that's the scene where she formulates the plan and allows the Legionnaires to escape. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, 4 is that's the page where I was like, come on, LaRoque, you need to help us a little more here. He's ready to chop Dreamgirl, but then the next you see her feet, and then you see Tellus with her in the next panel, but there's no motion lines or power lines. And there were a couple times where I thought there's an image later. Let me see. It's on page 21, the first panel, where Dreamgirl's kind of just sitting there. And I don't know if she's getting whammied by Mentala's power, but the look on her face is weird. It almost looks like someone should be standing there, like maybe grabbing her hair or something. But I'm like, what is that image? She looks like she's in the throes of a climax or something. What's happening?
Well,
so some weird art things.
Well, yeah, especially considering, what is it? 1, 2, 3 pages earlier, she gets blasted by flare, and she's on the ground, and then the next page, it looks like she's maybe starting to get up. Because she's on her knees, and then the next thing we see is her with this weird expression on her face. Yeah, you're right. That is. I hadn't really noticed or put those things together before. That is odd. Well, back on page 4, in my notes, I have the Legionnaires celebrate their ingenuity by, after Brainiac 5 reveals to them who Sensor Girl is, right? And Timberwolf, what is it? Timberwolf says, "I said nobody could really do all those stunts." Again, I swear to God, if he says that one more time, I'm going to reach into the comic and slap him. But
wait, Paul Levitt's. Did you read the letter column thing?
Yeah,
where Levitz
that's where I was going with this.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought, though.
Yeah, and then Brainiac 5's reaction. "I suppose that makes you the one who was the closest to the truth, Timberwolf. An awesome concept in itself." I love that. But then, yeah, I read the letters column here, and it says from Levitz, "As a longtime Timberwolf fan and a believer that his nature is to unsubtly see to the heart of a problem, see way back to issue 285, it was a special treat to make him the one absolutely right Legionnaire." I think maybe Levitz is extrapolating a little too much there, but because he's the one putting the words in the mouths of these characters, so I guess it makes sense to him. But I don't know. I think I was just going a little too far with Timberwolf there.
I have something here. Well, here's a quick one. Page 8. I like the way that the Empress kind of fawns over her eye after being released from ice. It's kind of very cute. But on page 6, Colossal Boy, he hits the emergency alert on his ring, and he says, "Look, I for one am not standing on ceremony." And he calls in the other Legionnaires. I was like, what does that mean? That you're only supposed to take care of your mission yourself, and not call everybody in? I don't understand that.
Yeah. I mean, I could totally understand if you're a prideful Legionnaire and you this is your mission and you want to complete it, survive it in this case. But yeah, that again, it kind of goes back to your comment about them acting as teammates, and that is more than just the group that you're with at the moment. There's a larger team at play here, so why would you not want to take advantage of that when you need to? And you mentioned page 8 there. There's also the thing at the bottom with Mentala. We at this point we discover supposedly why she joined the Fatal Five. She says they'll pay for rejecting me for that fish Tellus. I'm like, whoa. And there's that. We've talked about the not so subtle racism, or speciesism, or whatever we want to call it in this book for some of these characters, and here it is on display.
Yeah, Emerald Empress was doing that last issue. By the way, the next 3 pages, 9, 10, 11, are not in the Tales reprint.
I noticed that too. Yeah, right? That was interesting.
Which is, I guess, could kind of make sense. The White Witch thing is. Yeah. I think that's setting up something for next issue. And as we did get, the reactions from the Legionnaires, we talked about that before, they're not super, super strong. What I really took away from the Element Lad thing is, he hears from Brainiac 5. They both confirm that it's Sensor Girl is Projectra. And then he confirms it with Saturn Girl, who feels like she can reveal it considering the circumstances. And I sort of wrote in my notes, I guess so, because Jackie also knows that everybody knows, so at that point it doesn't necessarily matter. I guess if the sequence events had happened a different way, I would have been a little more like, "Ooh, Saturn Girl, no, that's not your place," But but we all already know, so I guess it kind of makes sense. What do you have next?
A very little thing, but something I appreciate. This is on page 17. Empress is holding their flight rings that the eye took from them. And I love it when artists go to this much detail. One of the rings that she's holding is very large, which, it's Tellus's. And so just that attention to detail.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, the little things like that. I just love it when they do that, because it helps ground the whole thing for me to make it more, quote unquote real. So I really dig that that tiny little detail.
Would you want to talk about what she does to persuade her? Because, I almost feel like I'm surprised she didn't use that on Empress.
Yes.
But I do wonder if like there's been a back and forth thing between Sensor Girl and the eye. Like if you did that to Empress, could Empress still see through her eye, or like so? I mean, if you're going to do it to anybody, do it to an SOB like Persuader. That's great. Teach him a lesson. I'm all for it.
Well, that has because, like I said earlier, Persuader was the first, or Projectra was the first Legionnaire that Persuader met in that very first appearance of his. So that's a nice connection, but thematically, to blind someone to blind the Emerald Eye of Ekron and therefore the Emerald Empress, I thought, boy, that would have been perhaps a much more satisfying ending than Sensor Girl just punching Emerald Empress out. I'm of two minds of this. What she does to Persuader, given that connection, I guess, is fine. And like I said before, it really shows her abilities to be more than just illusion. Or at least it seems to suggest that it's more than just an illusion that you could conceivably see through. This is so what's the word I'm looking for? So not sadistic. That's because that's going too far. Well, kick-ass. I'll just say kick-ass. I can't think of the word I'm trying to call this. But
scary.
Man, what?
Scary.
Yeah, she. Again, this goes back to to that executing a foul creature thing. Obviously she doesn't kill Persuader, and not that she necessarily has a reason to, like she did with Nemesis Kid, as a form of vengeance, but to cut him off so completely as she does. Let's see, what does she say? You deserve to live in the darkness. Live in the darkness of your soul. I take your senses from you. First sight, then sound, even taste and smell and touch. Call it illusion if you choose, but I deny you the universe you've befouled, Persuader. Live alone in your sickening mind. And the way that LaRocque is showing that, this is where I was okay with the way that he's presenting this, because you get these 3 panels demonstrating what we're being told, so to speak, but it's more of a reaction. So you see this close up of Persuader's face, mostly his eyes, and you get that kind of comic booky. This is what a blind person's eyes look like, and then it pulls out, and he's dropped to his knees, and then it goes even further out, showing him from afar, and it's just a white background, to accentuate that isolation that apparently he now feels or is experiencing. I just thought, wow, that was such a powerful sequence. One of the things I really loved about it. And then, like I said, a couple of pages later, Jackie just clocks Emerald Empress, and I thought, wow, this is the ending that we should have got, maybe with Empress, or why would you 2 pages before the ending, give us this really cool wow, oh my gosh moment, and then end it with kind of a jokey resolution. So that was my main complaint for that last page that we were talking about earlier.
Especially because she says on the next page, she says, "Look, I defeated you once. Now I have even more reason to," because Emerald Empress is the one who revealed her, without her consent. And I think if there's two plot things. They're not super large. One is kind of larger than the others that haven't been resolved, that I don't think will get resolved. And the one is, how did Emerald Empress know that it was Projectra? Unless she guessed, and unless the eye just sort of helped it. But nothing was ever put on the page about that, because she was so sure of herself in 25, where she's like, welcome, come back to the world that we know you as Projectra, or whatever she said. I forget what she said. The other one too, which we haven't talked about, but I kind of felt that the Mentala aspect of this story, I felt a little bad for her. We get the reveal that she was really acting as like an infiltrator and trying to get in and learn what Emerald Empress was up to, and then manages to help the day by deflecting Flare's powers, and then Flare hits a satellite and the Legionnaires can be on their way. And then Emerald Empress turns on her right away and realizes what she did and then kills her, like very horribly, even though the Legionnaires try to protect her, which I thought was kind of gruesome. And she clearly doesn't have a full command of her abilities, so she's in over her head, really. And I sort of felt bad because she was so confident in issue 14, but maybe that speaks to why she wouldn't have been a good member, because she was maybe too overconfident and obviously not thinking right if she's going to throw in with the Fatal Five, thinking she could do something, So it'd be interesting to see if there's any resolution to that next issue, but I don't think there is.
Yeah, what I was when I read this reveal for Mentala, because like I said earlier, she makes that comment about Tellus as to why she joined the Fatal Five, and that was a ruse. But what if she? I was, what I immediately was thinking was, Terra in the New Teen Titans as a plant for Deathstroke in the team, and we saw this play out over several issues over time. But with Mentala, it's very quick, and the reveal is very quick. So we didn't get to see again this play out over time and get to, I don't know, be more sympathetic to Mentala, to be on her side as a reader, and also. And they could have done, and what I was thinking is they Levitz could have done that, and so we are rooting for Mentala this whole time, and then, the Legionnaires find out here, it's revealed again, seeing through this illusion, it's revealed to them that she was trying to do this thing for them, and then what does that? How does that impact the team going forward? And the whole process of choosing Legionnaires, and maybe we should do things differently. Just a lot of things just coming to my head as I was reading through that particular sequence. On the other hand, I will say, from a storytelling standpoint, from Levitz and company, this economy, of not dragging this stuff out, allows for these kinds of revelations that just seem to come out of nowhere, and you can resolve the plot resolve the plot a little more quickly than perhaps Levitz wants to. He doesn't want to drag that stuff out, like I said.
And I mean, if she was able to kill Mentala that quickly, it's like, well, obviously she's toying with everybody else, but just. Which I think, I like your notion that what Censor Girl does to Persuade her, she should have done to Emerald Empress. I like that. And but then there's also the perverse part of me that's like, I love that. I don't know if she's thinking this, but Censor Girl's like, I'm gonna give Emerald Empress a black eye because she's so vain, and she's so, again, how dare you touch me? Like, I think she said that one other time, the last time that Censor Girl backhanded her. So. Just to give her a sock in the face, I don't know. It's funny to me.
Well, and again, to register a complaint, we've talked I think at length over the last several episodes, this royal connection between the two, and here's an opportunity to delve into that a little bit more, and I think it was wasted. There's really nothing here other than, again, Censor Girl gets the upper hand in the end by knocking her out. But I remember us talking about when they first met, and Empress recognizes, maybe even sees through some illusion that Sensor Girl is projecting, not necessarily of who she is, but just that she's hiding that the fact that she is Queen Projectra, or was Queen Projectra, and there's this connection between the two, and yet it doesn't play out here.
No, it's not as strong as like I wanted it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Although Levitz does put that in his list of clues, like the sense, her royal sense. I do like, though, on the second to last page, it's kind of like the Dream Girl killing discussion. So Emerald Empress says, "You think the mistress of the all-seeing eye can be fooled by your tricks?" Sensor Girl says, "I defeated you once. Now I have even more reason to." And Emerald Empress laughs and sort of scoffs at it. "Reason is not power, m'lady, and that is what you lack." And so she's saying to her that she's lacking power, right? Like, well, that's interesting because it makes me wonder, like in those early Projectra issues, was she all about her power and her station, right? Now she's been given power, but she's been also stripped of power. Mm-hmm. So, like, reason is enough for her now. It kind of goes back to the Dream Girl thing, right? Like, you killed someone because of your station, not because of logic or whatever. It was almost emotional, not reason, you know? So, again, I'm pulling way out of that little bit of conversation, but of course, Emerald Empress would think that power is better than reason, Yeah. So, yeah, that's a cool little bit.
Yeah, and I guess she is Empress is mocking Projectra by the "m'lady" comment, so that there are these connections, but yeah, I think that us being able to extrapolate things out of the dialogue, out of what we are given, is what or is a testament to the strength of the quality of this book. Even if we don't always agree with it.
Right. And even if that's not the full intention of it, it's so hard because comics, you don't hear inflection, right? You might get a bolded word here and there or a word that's italicized, but you don't really hear the inflection. But if someone to read that, for me, then you can take your time with the dialogue and then things can land differently. And I think that's the beauty of reading and rereading and kind of maybe pushing the dialogue further than just the printed page, like, because then you can back up certain things, like these discussions that they've been having, they would sound one of them probably has a British accent and the other one has, some other kind of accent, because whenever you're trying to show a person of high station, that's usually they speak in a certain way, so. Mm-hmm. That's why I said last time, stick White Witch in there and, you got a really crazy scene. So, fun issue though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think of I'm glad that it kind of ended in a way that we could have a large discussion, because I know for you've been saying you've been waiting to see how all this was going to play out. And even if there's some misgivings or some empty things here and there's a heck of a lot to go on from here. And, I always say, if you ever read a perfect comic, then why read another comic after that?
Yeah, well, any creative endeavor is about interpretation. And so, that's why we're here.
So we have a lot of other stuff to talk about. We should probably hit on some letter column stuff, the list of clues. Do you have that list?
Yes. That was in the back of issue 26. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to read all of it. Is there anyone that you really were like, okay, that really makes sense, or any of them that you were like, nope, that doesn't make sense at all?
The list as a whole, I think I think Levis is maybe playing a little fast and loose with some of these clues.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting to just read through them again as we did and just kind of see at what point, because you brought up that point, is like, well, at what point did they transition from Sensor Girl being Supergirl as their intention, and then having to switch. And I think he kind of, which one is it? I think he kind of answers that question. Here. Yeah, issue 16. And Levitz's response to this. The first is a clue that Sensor Girl senses events at a distance without use of supervision effect and senses change in elements in air. The first is a clue that she's not Supergirl, our red herring, of course, and the second again shows a new sensory power. So, obviously, before 16, they knew that this was not going to be Supergirl. At least that's how I'm extrapolating from that.
And that makes sense, because that was the issue where Brainy was all sad about Supergirl.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have known, I assume they would have known at that point that they were going to put the squash on any mention of Supergirl after a while. For future comics, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
The one that kind of stuck out to me was the one issue 21. The hologlobe is of a rando. The fact that Sensor Girl can fly with a flight ring in her quarters indicates she has a second, as a former Legionnaire would. That's like,
that's what I mean. It's like he's maybe playing a little fast and loose with his own logic, because, come on.
I mean, you could just say it was an illusion that she, that she was flying. That wasn't really her. She was just sending the image of Sensor Girl somewhere. I don't know. That was just weird.
Yeah.
And most of the other ones are things we already pointed out. Like she could sense things, like things in elemental stuff in Invisible Kid. Supervision without... That's the other one. Supervision without traditional supervision, which I guess they mean artistic-wise. But that you make that decision to do that. That's not like a universal thing.
Yes.
So, Sensor Girl not up on current events. She's been out of touch, unlike Supergirl, who would simply be ignorant of whole chunks of the 30th century. This is from issue 22. Sensor Girl believes criminals would hate her, so she's been an active heroine. Still more unusual use of the senses, sensing someone without microscopic vision. So, I mean, a lot of them are we either hit on, or they're just kind of... I think some of them are more hindsight.
But again, given those clues, the explicit acknowledgement of these clues by the writer, I still would not have guessed.
Yeah, so if you have issue 26, they're at the back of issue 26 for any reader. I don't think they include that in the DC Universe app.
No, they don't. Unlike me, however, Levitz printed the letter from Peter Brewer, and notes that not only was Peter right about who Sensor Girl was, he was the very first to be correct about that.
And his reasoning was very spot on, which was great.
And so, yeah, one of the things he talks about with the clues, he says, let's look at the possibilities. At first, I thought she was a Supergirl clone or created consciously or unconsciously by Brainiac 5. And who was it? Was it Chameleon Boy who made that comment, I think, an issue or two ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and boy, that would have been a very interesting story had that been the case.
Generally, I have a couple letter column things, some from issue 31 that was about issue 26. That really nasty letter from, I don't even remember that guy's name. I don't want to say it, like, where he's like, oh, you've neutered Projectra because of the... Or no, you neutered Sensor Girl by making her Projectra.
Yes. Yeah, this is the letter from Andrew Capraro? Capraro? Yeah.
Yeah, this is so nasty.
Yeah, wow. Well, pair that up with the one from Carl Mays. Um, he says this is the first time in over 10 years of reading comic books that I have ever written a letter, and I feel compelled to let you know how much I enjoyed the delightful Sensor Girl saga. So I thought that was a nice sandwiching of of letters, reactions to the whole Sensor Girl thing.
Yeah, good for them for including both.
Yeah, because it's so easy. It would have been it's so easy for them, the people behind the making of the comic, to only include complimentary stuff. And I've noticed that because Levitz usually writes the comments back to the letters in these letter columns. He does not shy away from either including or reacting against maybe some of these critical letters. So yeah. I just think that's really cool. In today's 2020 vision, excuse me for that pun, we tend to only be involved with like-minded individuals. If social media is any indication, right? Whether all this groupthink stuff, and like I said, Levitz does not shy away from alternative points of view in these reactions.
And then there's some generic stuff too. A reader references what's going to happen with Mon-El if there's no more Phantom Zone, and Paul Levitz references both the upcoming Cosmic Boy miniseries, which we'll eventually talk about, but also a crossover with Action Comics next year. So they're already planning the whole Legion, Superman, Superboy stuff.
Yeah.
There's even a subtle reference to Millennium, but we haven't even gotten to Legends yet. But someone mentions about all the stuff going on at Green Lantern Corps at the time, about how 1,000 years in the future there'll be a race of humans that'll reshape the world, blah, blah, blah. That'll eventually spin out into Millennium. There's some interesting letters from Tales of the Legion 351. Something random here from a writer named Jonathan talking about how there's a lack of older material being reprinted during the 80s. And I just thought, wow, how times have changed, right? And then they mentioned that there's going to be a Legion index from Independent Comics Group. And that index will start 7 issues from the issue we're reading now. In that letter column, they also talk about why they decided not to include the Legion Crisis issue, why it wasn't reprinted. And they say it was an editorial decision. The general consensus was that it was a Crisis crossover story that would be appearing a year too late and consequently cause too much confusion with the current continuity in the DC universe.
Mm-hmm.
As I think you surmised when we talked about that. They talk about a new title called Wanderers in DC's new format by Doug Munch and Steve Dillon of Preacher fame, which I didn't realize.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Edited by Karen Berger, but we won't get that until we're reading books in 1986. That won't come out until 1988. And then they also mention a multi-issue Legion directory somewhat similar to DC's Who's Who, but with a few creative twists to make it a unique comic, and that'll be another 19 episodes away or so when the Who's Who and the Legion of Superheroes begins.
Shall we go to Who's Who?
Yeah, might as well keep going with that, right? So here's the part where we take a look at the Legion of Superheroes throughout the DC Universe at the time that issue 26 hit. Who's Who 19. We might make a small reference to Superpowers, the third miniseries, number 1, and Booster Gold, number 8. So Who's Who 19, covered by Ernie Colon, featuring, we're going to talk about Quizlet, possibly Reverse Flash, Eric wants to mention Rip Hunter, and then Rose and Thorn.
And curiously enough, 3 of the 4 of those we had they're kind of have asterisks by them, question marks, because we were like, should we include them?
The obvious one is Quizlet, with artwork by Greg LaRocque and Art Nichols. Very surprised that Lytle's not drawing that. What did you glean from the Quizlet entry?
Well, maybe this is actually not much in particular to the entry itself, but what it was nice to bump up against is the LaRocque interview in back issue. What was it? What issue was that?
120, the most recent one.
120, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Featuring the Legion and some other future characters.
Yes, exactly. And because Peter recommended that we read through that. And there's a couple different things in here, but LaRocque mentioned this in the interviews in the Legion companion book, and I think I brought those up before. But then there's even more discussion in the interview that's with LaRocque in the back issue magazine, and he talks specifically about Quizlet and Quizlet's alienness and how that evolved over time. And so Quizlet, in LaRocque's mind, was this kind of worm-like alien or slug-like alien. If you look at those of you who have that back issue, there's some art that LaRocque shares in the article, and you get to see. I think this is what is supposed to be Quizlet's true form. That's within that little tiny spaceship thing that he's in. But that, like I said, that changed over time after LaRocque left the book, and Paul Levitz wanted to go a different direction with how the character what the character was like, physically in that sense. So I just thought that was an interesting difference of opinion. In fact, LaRocque even says when he was talking to Paul about this and what LaRocque's vision of it was, of Quizlet was, Paul's like, "Are you on the book?" And LaRocque says that he appreciated, I think something along his lines. He appreciated Paul's frankness in it, because Paul was writing the book, LaRocque wasn't on the book, and this is the direction that Paul was going to go. So it didn't matter what LaRocque, how LaRocque felt about that direction or what his intention was for Quizlet. But again, interesting thought experiments about the intention for the characters that these people are dealing with and developing over time.
So you kept saying LaRocque. Did you mean Lytle?
Oh, I did say LaRocque. I'm sorry. Yes, Steve Lytle.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Because when you mentioned "Are you on the book?" I was like, wait, LaRocque was on the book. So you meant Lytle. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I didn't get much out of it. He's from an unknown microdimension. I do like that they refer to Quizlet with its, right? They don't use he, his, or her.
Mm-hmm.
It says
that's
its.
True.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. Can emerge from the vessel in an energy-like form. The background art is kind of very stiff. It's not my favorite LaRocque artwork.
No.
But it did make me think. I don't think we get this, but I would love a Quizlet Computo story.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Right? The Major Domo floating around in that little sphere, and then you got Quizlet in his little ship. Like, what mayhem could they get up to?
That's a great idea.
Where next? I guess we could hit the Reverse Flash thing.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's just because it's mentioned once again that Iris West was born in the 30th century, sent back to Barry Allen's time, and then when she was killed, her essence was transferred back to the 30th century. that story where it's revealed that she's from the 30th century is from Flash 203 by Robert Kanigher and Irv Novick, Murphy Anderson, from late 1970. So when she went forward in time, or when Flash went forward in time, her last name is Russell, Iris Russell. He was sent to 2970 since it was, 1,000 years in the future. But always so weird. It's always so weird that was like a random Robert Kanigher, almost like trying to just spin a House of Mystery kind of tale with Iris, or Mystery in Space or something like that. And they decided to keep it in canon. Like they didn't neglect it, throw it away. They just were like, sure, she's from the future. It's like, what? So random. So I love that they kept that.
And then also that's, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but don't they tie the Tornado Twins into this once they've put those things together? And oh yeah, that totally makes sense. That kind of a thing. So it's that kind of continuity that or evolution of continuity that I like about DC Comics, at least in the past.
Yeah, a couple sites play a little fast and loose of what year it actually all takes place. Like, I saw one where they said that after the Flash's title ended and he retired to the 30th century right before the Crisis began, that they were in the year like 2945 or 50 or something like that. And I was like, well, that don't make sense. I think part of that is because they want to give enough time for the Tornado Twins to reach a certain age to be peers of the Legion of Superheroes, right? That's okay. That kind of makes sense, I guess.
Sure.
But I thought that was a little early, in its
Well,
this year.
The Legion timeline has always been has to be a little fast and loose over the decades, right? Because they're supposed to be 1,000 years ahead of us, but yet they've had this decades-long span of publishing comics, of them being in the 1,000 years ahead of us. So
right,
yeah, it's like when Superman met Kennedy and other presidents, and yet here he is in the modern times. There is a reference to the 25th century in the Reverse Flash entry, which it has a connection to Booster Gold, and then also Rip Hunter, which is next in our Who's Who. So I thought that was just interesting serendipity of connections between all these characters.
Yeah, it's like they're all stay away from the 25th century. That's for sure.
Yeah. It doesn't have a whole lot of travel appeal to to various characters. Yeah.
Was that it about the Rip Hunter thing? Is that all you wanted to make mention of? Or
yeah, there's honestly. So this is with art by Tim Truman, which is probably the best thing about this entry, quite honestly. But the connection here is, of course, that with Booster Gold, he uses one of Rip Hunter's time spheres to time travel back to 1986 or whatever it is, 85 or 86, whatever it is. So there's that connection. It did make me want to go back and find some of those Rip Hunter Time Master comics and read them just to see what they were like, because I honestly I've never read anything other than Rip Hunter appearances in other comic books. So I've not read his stories proper.
Yeah, and if I'm remembering right, he does pop up in Booster Gold in the series that we're reading.
Oh, he does
eventually.
Okay.
And then
that would be interesting.
Yeah, and then after the 52 weekly series, the Booster Gold series that spins out of that, Rip Hunter is also involved in that. But I don't want to say more than that in case people haven't read it.
Yeah, he certainly has a longevity that I would have not anticipated, just based on his original run of stories, I guess.
He's a 50s DC sci-fi staple, Eric. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right up there with Adam Strange and Space Cabbie.
Yeah.
And then if we want to go to Rose and Thorn, the Earth 1 version, art by Dan Jurgens, Dick Giordano, just again because she's appearing in the Booster Gold stuff that we're reading, but then obviously supposedly has some connection to the Bendis Legion of Superheroes, as little as it is.
Yeah. The only, let's see here. Yeah, the only thing I kind of picked up on that was, and this, boy, talk about tenuous connections, Peter. Why did he pick Rose as the connective tissue between our modern set of heroes and the Legion in this newest incarnation of the Legion? And there's a mention here in the Rose and Thorn entry of her battling the 1000, the new technologically advanced version of the 100, which is the group that killed her father and caused her to become Thorn because she was so distraught over the death of her father. And so, the 1000 years in the future, it's totally has nothing to do with anything, but it's just like, okay, I'm grasping at straws, but here's something, I guess.
Oh yeah. I didn't make, that's actually an interesting connection. See, now that would make sense.
If the 1000 had something to do with the Legion in some way?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was, I think in Firestorm, there was something called the 2000 Committee, which apparently they were supposed to do something by the year 2000. So, the 100 to grow into the 1000, I don't think it was time-based, but that's still an interesting connection there.
Yeah.
She first appeared in Lois Lane 105 from 1970. She first appeared in the Lois Lane issue right before the infamous I Am Curious Black issue, which is Lois Lane 106, where Lois Lane turns herself black to experience life as a black woman. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I really didn't get much else from a lot of her first appearance. Readers' reactions to her first appearance was things like, "Oh, she's just like a female Batman because her father was killed. She's like a Jekyll and Hyde character." Somebody even said she's like a Black Canary character because she uses a wig. Yeah, just one of those 70s random DC characters, that barely pops up here and there.
All right, which thing do we want to go to next?
Let's just get the superpowers thing out of the way. Come on.
Yeah, because Tyr appears in this issue. As I described him, the alien with the screwdriver arm in my notes. And honestly, Peter, that's pretty much all I have about that, other than, boy, you could really see they were trying to sell some toys.
Yeah, we made mention of the arm before, right? Like, why the hell is this arm the way it is? And then it's like, oh, well, here you go. Superpowers, the third miniseries, Paul Kupperberg, Carmine Infantino, Pablo Marcus, Albert de Guzman, Joe Orlando, Barry Marks. And you're right, by this third miniseries, Jack Kirby's no longer around. It's clear, they're all three toy-driven, but this one is so toy-driven. Because I actually went back and read the other two miniseries, because I don't think I ever finished the second miniseries. And I had the first miniseries, but I was a kid. I didn't remember it. I'm going to say right now, the first Superpowers miniseries is fantastic. And if you are a New Gods Jack Kirby fan, and you have all of his 70s New Gods stuff, and then you have the Hunger Dogs graphic novel, you need Superpowers, the first miniseries 1 through 5, because it continues a lot of that story. And there's some trippy, Kirby only plots it for the first 4 issues, but then the final issue, he writes and draws it, which he did the covers, but I for some reason thought he did the interior art the whole way through, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
That final issue is so Kirby, so Fourth World. It's where we get the Whirlagog, that that Grant Morrison used in his JLA run, and that the Hourman used during his run, which I never knew. I didn't know the Whirl of Gog was a Kirby thing. I thought that was a Morrison thing. It's fantastic. This first issue, which again we're only reading because Tyr's in it, and he's only in it for like maybe 4 or 5 panels. Yeah. Not so good. Not good at all.
Yeah. I will say I have read the only Superpowers miniseries I read was the first one, and I've only read it within the last year because it was available on the DC Universe app. I remember seeing the series on the stands when it was being published, but I just never bought it. I didn't care for Kirby back then. And I will say that Kirby's art on that final issue is probably the saving grace of that miniseries for me. So I did not enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's so interesting, it's later Kirby, right? It's sort of like near the end, the last 10 to 15 years of his career. So it's not like the 70s stuff that has the punch, 60s, 70s stuff. But I might do a separate episode on that for the Daily Rios, because there's some things in there that I'm like, oh my God, I kind of want to talk about that. So there's going to be a rush on buying Superpowers because of it. So, but the other 2 miniseries, not worth it.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to say about that this Superpowers issue we're talking about with Tyr is that boy, when you open the page and you see Orion in his armored getup, it's like, oh wow, this is the design for the toy, and it makes no sense whatsoever, but here it is.
Yeah, and he's so out of character. And just even the second miniseries, which takes place after the Hunger Dogs graphic novel, even that still has some, I kind of call it like Earth Kirby, right? Like it's sort of playing in that world as if he never left DC, right? But this third one is not good. So then we go to Booster Gold number 8. We've been reading Booster Gold because of his connection with the Legion flight ring and his connection to the future, and I knew that this appearance with the Legion of Superheroes was about ready to come in, so this is the first of a 2-parter called Time Bridge, and where we really get into the origin story of Booster Gold, coming back from the 25th century to 1985 because he wants to be a superhero, and he wants to do that by stopping an assassination attempt on Reagan and Bush, which I thought was funny. And throughout it all, the Legion of Superheroes find out that part of his equipment involves using Brainiac 5's belt. So they go back in time. They don't know that he's a hero. They go back in time to figure out what's going on, and they get caught up in this assassination attempt. Booster Gold thinks it's the Legion that's going to do it, and that's pretty much where the cliffhanger ends. What do you think of this issue?
Well, having not read a whole lot of Booster Gold, really the draw for me was the Legion connections, as we've been chronicling here in these episodes, and then finally to culminating in the appearance of the Legion. It's just a nice way to connect the two directly. The mystery of how Brainiac 5's force field belt appeared in Rip Hunter's time bubble 500 years previous to their own timeline. That's just that little mystery is nice to see how it plays out here. I don't know that there's a whole lot of stuff to this beyond the classic heroes fighting each other because of a misperception of the situation. So that's just a well trod trope of superhero comics. So again, much like a lot of the Legion issues, I am anticipating what comes next. What does the next issue reveal about this situation? So I'm looking forward to reading issue number 9.
Cool. I took away some stuff that we've been talking about. There's another very definitive mention of the void in time.
That's true.
That when Booster Gold and Skeets traveled back from their century to ours, they had to go through that, right? So, and there was another mention of, I think in the narration, that eventually there would be like the destruction of, between 1985 and Booster's time, that civilization had crumbled and rebuilt itself. And they reference Hex, the series Hex.
That's right. Forgot about that.
Which, we covered that one ridiculous crossover between Legion of Superheroes and Hex. But here they are connecting their 3 quote-unquote future books in this larger discussion that we've been having about what's the mandate post-crisis about time travel, right? And what future is real. The Great Disaster no longer exists, at least in this time, post-crisis. It goes from the Age of Heroes to the Age of Hex, and then eventually down the road all the way down through Booster Gold, and then eventually the Legion of Superheroes. So that's kind of cool to see that again. Some other things I took away, seeing Booster in his purple and blue Space Museum costume. Uniform is the same uniform that they used for his appearance in Legion of Superheroes Millennium, although obviously updated a bit, but it's pretty much the same, so that's kind of cool. And when the Legion goes to the Time Institute in the beginning of the issue, they meet the Chronarch, and they meet another scientist, Dr. Manning, who I don't think we ever see that person again. But he talks about Rip Hunter and saying how Rip Hunter was a Time Master who was active during the mid-20th century, which is right, because that puts him right in like 50s DC sci-fi era. Even though post-crisis he's going to be a colleague of Booster Gold, and he'll exist in the late 20th century. And then my thing with this Dr. Manning guy, Professor Manning or whatever, it made me think of Hal Jordan's identity when he goes into the way, way, way future, and he becomes a character known as Paul Manning. Do you ever read those stories?
No.
Yeah, apparently he gets pulled to the 58th century and assumes the identity of Paul Manning, P-O-L, same as first name as Magnetic Kid. And then eventually, like during this time when Green Lantern is doing the Green Lantern Corps, that one character, Savick, the guy with the freaky head, he gets pulled to the future, and then he gets assigned that identity as well. So for them to use Manning, I was kind of like, are they referencing that at all? But he never shows up again. Right, so this whole thing about Brainiac's belt, and they're like, well, we got to go back in time. Why didn't they just assume that it wound up back there somehow? Like, obviously, for time travel purposes, they have to go back too, so that it gets put there. But I was like, do they really need... And Booster Gold buries the sphere, the time sphere, in Metropolis in 1985. You mean to tell me a thousand years went by and nobody excavated that spot? And it was only buried like maybe 10 feet below the surface? Natural disasters, none of that happened? Come on.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of conveniences in this plot.
Right. We also learned that Booster and Skeets spent a month in the time zone learning about his new era. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I just assumed the time, to travel through time, you go from one to the other. You don't just hang out in the time stream, right? Like, but I guess if you got a time ship, that's what you do. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's usually something that's not delved upon. So that was kind of neat. A different thing, anyway.
Yeah. Brady makes mention of Metropolis in 1985, saying this is a far cry from our single giant city consuming the eastern seaboard. That's a big city. And then says, Cosmic Boy is already in the 20th century on vacation, which we saw him leave with Night Girl in that Mon-El issue. But he's in 1986, and these Legionnaires are in 1985. So I thought that was kind of cool, that even though they left at the same time, they're totally in two different parts of the 80s.
It's almost like traveling to different time periods is akin to how we travel to different places.
Yeah. It's just so easy.
Yeah. If only.
If only. And then, of course, my Crisis Kid brain went, wait a minute. So the issues were published in 1985. The story supposedly started in story in like July of 1985. So was the crisis only like a couple of months long? Like, because Booster shows up in August of 1985. He's technically one of the first characters post-crisis that did not appear in the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, was the crisis only a month long? I mean, it felt like it should have been longer than that.
That's interesting, because I always thought of the crisis happening maybe over the course of a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I don't, in text, I don't know that there's a timeline given for that. So yeah, that'd be interesting to go back and try to suss that out.
Yeah, you think I would know, but I don't. Because in publishing terms, like I said, it was a full year, if not more.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that's why I always think of it being longer. But no, that's a good point. I'll have to run that by Adam's ear.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is something you guys should get into on the Crisis tapes.
Because there has to be a demarcation. It has to be a point, right? Because if it's a story featuring Booster Gold, that is post-crisis. And that means the Legionnaires are coming back to this post-crisis Earth. Cosmic Boy, we're going to see that in the Cosmic Boy miniseries, that he's definitely coming back to the post-crisis Earth. And Superboy's continuity is in a whole other place right now. So, again, it's the only reason why I'm really kind of paying attention to this. And then my last question is, how did Booster Gold know that Cam was a Durlan?
Yeah, I thought that was curious too.
Right?
So Durlans are known in the 25th century?
I guess they must be.
For what we know of the Durlan, at least my memory of Cam's people is that they are a very isolationist society, and maybe something happened in 500 years to make them so.
I mean, we know that the invasion is coming, but DC doesn't know that at this point. Right?
That's true. I forgot about that. Their involvement in that, yeah.
Yeah. So, I thought that was kind of cool. Or confusing, but interesting. So we'll see. And go ahead.
Sorry, do you know, did Jurgens have anything to do with Invasion directly?
No, I don't think. No, that was more Giffen and.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Todd McFarlane and Kevin Maguire. Yeah, and some really nice artwork. I think the opening splash page is really great with Brainy and Your Boy, Ultra Boy, and Cam. I like the 2-page spread in the Time Institute and a splash page of Booster Gold. It's some really nice. It's a nice looking book for the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out next issue, because I don't remember. And it's all just to connect that Booster Gold also has a Legion flight ring as well. So I guess we'll get all the answers. Okay, and then next, because I can't stop trying to overanalyze every bit of Legion continuity at this point. Also during this month of June, when all these books came out, a little story called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow also hit, because Superman and Action Comics and all the Superman titles were coming to an end. So we got Superman 423, Action Comics 583. Really only pinpointing it again just because there's some Legion of Superhero cameos. And I mean, come on, it's a great story anyway, so why not reread it?
Yeah.
But what was your takeaway with these two issues?
Well, it was nice to revisit this because I haven't read this in years. But every time I do, just talking about it, generally speaking, this story always gets me in a lot of different ways. It's just so well done with everybody involved that worked on these two issues. But in rereading it from the perspective of really just examining it for the Legion's involvement, the Legion was central to the plot, and without their assistance, Superman would not have survived this encounter with the antagonist. So I love that the fact that the Legion, which has been pre-crisis, been such a dominant presence in Superboy and Superman's life, that at the end of that run, that they come back, even if it is the like the 1960s version of them, which I've noticed that whenever Kurt Swan is involved, that we normally get appearance, or when Kurt Swan's involved with Superman, we normally get these the older versions of the Legionnaires showing up, which I just think is just a nice little touch.
Right.
Even though it should be the more modern versions, I guess, showing up, just in terms of publishing, the publishing aspect of it, show the characters that people will see on the stands, kind of a thing. But it's charming. So
it does make sense though with the story, because they brought Supergirl with them.
Yeah, that's true. It totally makes sense within the story. I just thinking about other issues that I've read, it always seems to be those characters. And then yes, since you brought up Supergirl, given what we just talked about, and we've been reading the Supergirl connection, Sensor Girl, and all that kind of stuff, to see Supergirl in that story, which was that the final appearance of Supergirl?
There was a Supergirl special? I don't remember now. Well, there was, we'll have to see.
Yeah, because was there, I was thinking of, we've read some other issues involving Supergirl, I think post-crisis, but referring back to, no, it could, this couldn't
marriage.
Yeah. This couldn't have been the final appearance then of the pre-crisis Supergirl, but regardless, seeing her in that more, I don't know, that earlier form of her, because she's wearing the blue skirt costume, definitely the 1960s version of Supergirl, when she would have adventures with the Legion. And just, I don't know, just that whole, given what happened to her in Crisis and Superman's reaction to seeing Supergirl and that connection with Supergirl and Sensor Girl, it just, all of it's just kind of this mishmash of emotion for me. And when Superman lashes out to Brainiac 5, it's, I mean, extremely well drawn and executed by Swan and Perez, because you feel that flash of anger from Superman, and you almost think like he's gonna belt Brainiac for bringing this onto him, and forcing him to experience those emotions and that loss. And so I really dug that.
Yeah, now I'm really curious about that. I'm curious to see when we do get her final appearance, because there's a Christmas issue later, a year or two later, I think, that kind of references, I think it's a Dead Man story even, references a girl named Kara.
Oh yeah.
But they don't show her in costume.
Yes. Yeah, I know that story you're talking about. I don't remember all the details of it, but yeah.
Yeah. And then the second chapter in Action Comics, we get to see the Legion of Supervillains.
Mm-hmm.
Lightning Lord, Cosmic King, Saturn Queen. They say they're from the 30th century. So that's like another little bit of Legion continuity, and then we also get to see Jimmy Olsen as Elastic Lad,
and Lana Lang as not Insect Girl, which I thought was curious, but a Superman or Superwoman like character,
right?
Like I said, in the Superman issue, Brainiac 5 and the Legion come back to give Superman a gift, and it's an image of him holding the Phantom Zone projector, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then in Action Comics 583, that gift is what allows Superman to come up with a means to stop Mxyzptlk. So I just that whole through line of the Legion's involvement in the story, I just love that Moore and the rest allowed the Legion to have such an impact in the story, given, like I said, that history of the Legion with the character. So it was lovely to see it from that kind of different perspective now than when I first read the story.
Yeah, those are great points. Yeah, it's such a good, even as dark and depressing as it is. It's definitely a journey through the Superman mythos. So of course the Legion of Superheroes have to be involved, and it's the last. I'd have to check this, but it's also the sort of like the last pre-crisis Superman story, and we're going to see pre-crisis Superboy. We may even still see pre-crisis Supergirl like down the road. But one character that I don't think we see much of, if at all, is pre-crisis Superman. Every time they go back and show like an Infinite Crisis and 52 and Convergence and other places, when they show that the DC Universe did have a multiverse back in the 80s, they always show John Byrne's version of Superman.
That's right.
I don't think they ever, but I don't, of course I haven't read everything, but they rarely go back to this Kurt Swan, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Julius Schwartz era of Superman.
Yeah.
The Superman that's sort of like in his late 30s, early 40s. So this is the big send-off, and it certainly is going to mean something to us because, as that one letter column referenced that I talked about earlier, in about another year or so, we're going to have a major Superman Legion of Superheroes crossover. So, yeah, fun. Always fun to see where the Legion pops up. It'd be really interesting to put this story in continuity and see which version of the Legion is this. Is it the one we're reading? I mean, I guess, but maybe it's them just, maybe the story exists in the Pocket universe that, I don't know, but knowing what happens to that Superboy, then no, that doesn't happen in that.
Yeah. No, good point. I had never thought of that way.
Where does this Legion exist? What universe are they going back to? The Schwartz universe. The Schwartz. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, long episode, and we're not done yet.
No.
What do you have for us here at the end here?
So I mentioned the back issue interview with Steve Lytle, not Greg LaRocque. I think we wanted to really touch on the whole idea of this new Legion book that Lytle was going to be involved with, and seemed to be kind of driving it from what I was gleaning from the interview, and which was to be called the Legion Outpost, which is the name of the Legion letter column in issue 26 and others. But that was a nice, and I don't know how long the letter column has been called that, maybe years at this point. But that's a nice little meta thing that they would come up with a book that's named that. It'd be like doing a Superman book called the Metropolis Mailbag or something, which doesn't make any sense at all. But whatever, you get my point. But I really dug the idea of this new concept and this new team of Legionnaires. And Lytle was very big. You know, I talked before about how he wanted Quislet to be this alien creature, and you know, that was one of his contributions, was to bring in some of these more alien-looking creatures, and he reiterated that desire in the team makeup that he was putting together for this. Maybe not enough for his liking, but just the core concept of Legion Outpost was a group of these Legionnaires that he wanted to have in this would be, for whatever reason, be sent off to an outpost area of the United Planets, and the Legion would be there to do their Legionnaire thing, and be that sector's policeman, so to speak, and what kind of adventures would they have when they're cut off from the Legion headquarters and the rest of the Legion and the comforts of Metropolis and the HQ and the maybe the inner worlds of the United Planets. So actually, it kind of reminds me of Star Trek Voyager now that I'm thinking about it. And then things happened. It morphed into something else. What we would then learn and know to be the Legionnaires book. And then at that point, when it started to transform into not the Legion Outpost, Lytle, I guess, decided that he didn't want to pursue doing anything with it. So that was an interesting insider tidbit.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you in like a text or something like that, and I think Lytle freely admits he was a young, sought after artist, and I think his brashness got in the way a bunch of times.
Yeah,
because I you know, when you mention things got away from the book, it's not always on DC's side that, you know, he even says, I mean, we talked about this before, that his decision to leave Legion was probably too rash, and that he should have fought harder for what he wanted to do. Instead, he took his pencils and went home, you know. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think he had a lot of killer ideas. But even on Doom Patrol, he only lasted a few issues and then had to leave too because of differences. So it just makes me wonder. He just, I guess, was very. He wanted things a certain way. I mean, there's a great vitality that he brought to this Baxter run, certainly with character designs and background character work, and we really feel that, you know. Mm-hmm. I think those issues that we read that he was involved came as pleasant surprises for both of us. So it's kind of a shame that I think we might have lost someone that could have been a real creative force to whatever it is that happened, you know?
Yeah.
And then we get him as cover artist for a lot of books, but rarely interiors, right? Like, I only really know him as cover artist for a long time after this Legion run. So, yeah, that would have been cool. I didn't get to finish that article, so I was glad that you read it, and flipping through it, it's just like, what could have been.
Well, yeah, and so in terms of what it became, which, like I said, it was the Legionnaires book, and this is, I forget, Peter, is this post Zero Hour?
Yeah, well, the Legionnaires book started when the 5 years later was still going on.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Right, and then they both changed over after 0 Hour.
Yeah, the SW6 thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, okay. Yes, okay. So yeah, they were going to bring back the earlier versions of the Legionnaires, and that became that book. And which explains why some of the members of the Legion Outpost series that Lytle was going to work on included some now dead Legionnaires, such as Feral Lad, Karate Kid, or maybe he was referring to the new Karate Kid that we've seen in the series already. Yeah. And then of course Quizlet and some others. But he also created a speedster called Allegra, which may have been the first Latina character in the Legion, I think is what they were getting at. Mm-hmm. And this new this weird Superboy connection of the character Neutron, which there's a really cool image of him in the article. A neat design anyway.
Yeah. I thought they were gonna I thought maybe he was trying to go for like a Reflecto thing, but no.
That would have been, I think, a little more, or made a little more sense. But
yeah. He really feels like a modern in the 80s anyway, a modern version of Dave Cockrum.
Like, yeah,
a guy that came into the Legion with a lot of big ideas, changed costumes, created new characters, wanted to do a spin-off just like Cockrum did, but and that they were called the Outsiders, and then those characters eventually found their way into the X-Men universe, including Storm and Nightcrawler and some of the Imperial Guard. And here's Lytle, sort of going along the same track, wanting to put his mark on the Legion, which he did, but then eventually plans just fell away.
One of the two of the other characters I hadn't mentioned before that were going to appear in this series was Dream Girl, because we talked earlier about how important she was to the story of issue 26, but she was going to be a part of this, and so that would have been interesting to see how. Well, I don't know if this would have been I'll just say the older Dream Girl or the younger version of her from the SW6 batch, but there's an interesting character design image that we get in this back issue article, and she's next to this more alien looking character called Antares, which they just mention. They don't really say anything more about her, but I think this goes more towards Lytle's desire to have a more alien looking cast.
Yeah, it's always great when you get I love back issue magazine. It's just so good. All the Tomorrow stuff is just so. I'm sitting here next to my shelf with all of these Tomorrow's reference books and just barely read it, any of them, small percentage. It's I got to dig in because there's so much information. But well.
Have they done? I forget who did the Legion Companion. No, that's Tomorrow's. Okay.
Yeah, that's Tomorrow's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have they ever done a Legion book? And I have it right here.
And they also, I'm pretty sure they also did another one called Legion Outpost, which was like a collection of the fan magazine.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I've always wanted to get a hold of. I think that came out through Tomorrow's. There was another book you mentioned too from Sequart, right?
Yeah, it's is it Teenagers from the Future?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I think I actually have that somewhere in my collection. I'll have to go pick that out or pull that out and see what's in there.
Well, when we get to issue 27, next episode, we'll talk about some things that are running concurrent to the Legion title. There's another DC book that we'll be able to dip in and out of with Legion references. So we'll talk about that next. We won't cover an issue next episode. We'll just talk about it, just so we'll tease people about what's coming for this back half section of the Legion project. There's some fun stuff coming up. So always trying to look and really it's just a way to expand my knowledge. It's kind of selfish reasons. I'm like, wait, I got to reconnect with all this early Legion stuff because I don't remember any of it. So,
yeah.
Should be fun. All right, that was a meaty episode. Woo.
Yes, it was.
Well, some big ideas. Hopefully Levitz gives us some small ideas from here on out, so we can just.
Yeah.
Anything else to impart?
No, I think we have spent enough time on this episode.
All right, great. Be safe out there, whatever your
Yes.
plans are. If you celebrate Thanksgiving or anything around this November, be safe, be well.
Be like Sensor Girl and wear a mask.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, and we'll talk soon, Eric.
Always good to talk to you, Peter.
Yep. And as always, long live the Legion Project
Podcast.
Ciao.
Take care.